which is 10 times more than the official numbers. The most likely statement is somewhere 200,000 Romani people in Ukraine. Why such differences? There are several reasons. First, some Roma in Ukraine don't have official documents, especially in places where they live in compact communities. Secondly, many Roma hide their origin. They say they are Romanians, Turks, Serbs, Greeks, or someone else. They do this because of discrimination. They would like to avoid discrimination. Unfortunately, the situation is quite common. One of the sub-ethnic group of Roma in Ukraine is the Vlachoria, also called Katunaria. This is one of the oldest Romani group in Ukraine. Their ancestors migrate here no later than 17th century. Today, Vlachoria mostly live in Donetsk and Luhansk regions of Ukraine, and they are also widely spread in southern Russia. What is notable that the Vlachoria language has many borrowing from both Romanian and Ukrainian languages. The culture of Vlachoria has also been greatly influenced by Ukrainian culture. However, despite this, their dialect and traditions remain strongly distinct and well preserved in Ukraine. It's notable that in some Vlachoria families, child marriages are still practiced, where girls and boys get married at the age of 9, 8, or 10 years. There is traditional also of Kalim, it's dowry that the groom's family must pay to the bride family. Usually this amount ranges from $5,000 to $10,000. The Vlachoria dialect belongs to the Vlah group of the Romani language, although the language is generally well preserved, it's still not well described. Since 2014, I have been working on compiling the dictionary of the Vlachoria dialect and plan to publish it in 2025. This photo of my grandmother's families. My family is quite mixed. My mother is from Vlachoria Roma and my father from Servoria Roma. In this picture, you see my great-grandmother with her children and other relatives. This is another photo of Vlachoria from my region, from Kherson region. The next group is the Crimean Roma. They are only one group of Roma in Ukraine who follow Islam. They arrived in Crimea at the end of 18th century and they came from Moldova. Although Crimean is also Crimea is their historical homeland, but today they are widely spread across the southern part of Ukraine, including the Kherson region, Odessa, and Mykolaiv. Crimean Roma can also be found outside of Ukraine. They are widely represented in Russia as well in Kazakhstan, especially in the capital of Kazakhstan, in Almaty. The culture of Crimean Roma, like Vlachoria, keeps the traditional of bride price, they said, for this Kalimi. The language of Crimean Roma belongs to Balkan group and has many borrowing from Turkic languages. Like the Vlachoria, Crimean Roma remain a rather closet and conservative group where traditional play an important role. This one, another photo of Crimean Roma from my city. Next group is Servoria. Servoria are the first of Roma group who appeared in the mainland part of Ukraine. They likely arrived in 15th or 16th century, so a century or 2 centuries earlier than the Vlachoria. According to some sources, the Servoria came from Serbia, while others they came from Romania. The second version is supported by the language, which contains a lot of numbers of Borvin, not only from Ukrainian language, but also from Romanian. However, they have fewer Romanian Borvin in their language than Vlachoria. Some of Servoria have lost their native language, and now they use a Ukrainian ethno-linguistic variety of the Romani language. This is essentially mixed Ukrainian, Russian, and Romani language, with Ukrainian being dominant. This phenomenon could be considered a para-Romani language. However, some Servoria still retain their original language well. The Servoria have lived alongside Ukrainians for a long time, so their rituals have been strongly influenced by Ukrainians' traditional. The second name of the Servoria is Ukrainsky Roma. It means Ukrainian Roma. This photo shows me and my grandfather. My grandfather is around 30 old in this photo. Here another picture from my family. It shows my paternal family, my great-grandfather, his children, and other relatives. The photo was taken in a camp when my family was still leading a nomadic lifestyle. Notable, my father is the first generation in our family born during the settled period, and I belong to the second settled generation in my family. Another photo of Servoria women. The Servoria live almost all over Ukraine, but the main regions where they settled are Donetsk, Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions. They are also widely represented in the southern part of Russia. The language of the Servoria belong to the Vlach dialect group also. In addition to this, there are other group of Roma living in Ukraine: Kelderara, Lovara, Ruska Roma, Гімпени, Кишиньовцаря із Словак Рома, Плащуни, Лінгурари, Литовська Рома, Лотви, Молдованоря, Серворя, Влахоря, Crimean Roma. For example, is Slovak Roma, who are most numerous in Ukraine, but mainly concentrated only in one region, Zakarpattia. The language of the Slovak Roma. Often in Ukraine, we often say to is Slovak Roma like Zakarpattian Roma. Their language belongs to the Carpathian dialect group. Most Roma group in Ukraine were formed as separate sub-ethnic groups outside of Ukraine at an earlier stage of their history. However, there are groups that were formed as separate sub-ethnic units right here in Ukraine. There are the three groups I mentioned before: Servoria, Vlachoria, and Crimean. So it's totally Ukrainian Romani groups. So here's a territory of Ukraine, and Ukrainian Roma live around all territory of Ukraine, but the main region for Roma is Zakarpattia. It's near Poland and Hungary. And the second biggest region for Roma is Odessa. It's near Moldova. Notable, Ukraine has a law in Ukraine, I mean in country. Ukraine has a law on indigenous peoples, which is an internal document granting indigenous status to groups that were formed on Ukrainian territory. This group do not have their own state and represent a minority within the Ukrainian population. Currently, 3 peoples have this status in Ukraine. All of them is peoples from Crimea. It's Crimean Tatars, Krimchaks, and Karaites. However, based on this criteria of this law, some Roma groups could have this status also, because the criteria of this law, next one, they should have a historical connection to the territory of Ukraine, be a minority in Ukraine, have a unique language and cultural and traditions, and have self-governing bodies. At least, so it's 2 groups of Roma could also claim this status, Crimean Roma and Servoria. Currently, my colleagues and I are actively working on promoting the initiative to recognize the Crimean Roma and Servoria as indigenous people of Ukraine. Potentially, the Vlachoria could also be included in this category, but further studies needed for this group. Most Roma group in Ukraine led a nomadic lifestyle until 1956. This year, the Soviet government passed a law to prohibit Roma from their nomadic lifestyle. From that moment, most Roma began to transition to a settled life. Failure to comply with this law could lead imprisonment for up 5 years. The transition to a settled life after 1956 variety. For some, it was normally and voluntary, while for others, Roma, it was forced and done under pressure. Notable, despite this law, some Vlachoria families continued to roam from place to place even in the 1980s. At the same time, some Servoria families began transition to settled lifestyles as early as the 18th century. This highlights the diversity of Romani population in Ukraine, which expressed not only in ethnic or religious diversity, but also in the degree of integration into Ukrainian society. After Ukraine gained independence, many Romani non-governmental organizations, NGOs were created, which are actively working in various directions and representing the interests of the Romani population in Ukraine. Today, there are about 100 Romani NGOs in Ukraine, making the country a leader in the number of such organizations in Europe. This organization work on Romani rights protection, fighting discrimination, working with documentation for Roma, as well as improving education and living conditions for Romani people. Additionally, Ukraine has a national strategy for the protection of Romani rights, which was adopted at the state level back in 2030. Recently, the strategy was extended until 2030. Since Ukraine independence, many positive steps have been taken to improve the situation of the Roma. One of these, for example, it was published a lot literature for children in Romani language. For example, in 2020 and 2022, my colleagues and I published several children's textbooks for bilingual education of Roma children in schools. These books received recommendation for use in formal education from UNICEF and Ukrainian Center for Educational Development, which was the first case in Ukraine for textbooks in Romani language. In addition, other organizations have created various programs at national and local levels aimed to improving the lives of Roma. In particular, Human Rights Center for Roma have been opened. Moreover, my like-minded colleagues and I created a Romani Young Center in Kakhovka. It's my homeland. So the same city where I lived before the war. However, after the Russian aggression began, Kakhovka was occupied by Russian forces and our center was captured and looted. This was difficult for Romanians in our city. So now I will show you short videos about this Romani center, because the center was built by Roma themselves from scratch. We did everything ourselves. So now this center looted because of occupation. So, and despite the positive changes that have occurred in recent years, the situation for Roma in Ukraine remains complicated. Problems of discrimination and violence are still, we have still have this problem. A vivid example is the incident in Kiev in 2018. A group of far-right radicals from the C14 organization attacked Roma camp in Kiev. They set tents on fire and attacked the camp's residents, men, women, and children, who were forced to flee. This case sparked wide public resonance, but unfortunately none of the attackers were punished. In the same year, another tragic attack occurred in Lviv, during which radicals killed a young Roma and injured several others. The authorities respond slowly to this incident, and the criminals were not punished also. Another similar case occurred in the same year, but in another city, in Ternopil. A group of men set fire a Roma settlement, forcing its residents to flee. The police initiate a case under the hooliganism article, but in reality, this was a hate-driven attack by radical groups. According to research from Kyiv International Institute of Sociology, Roma in Ukraine have long remained the most discriminated group. For example, in 2021, the level of intolerance toward Roma on the social distance scale was 5.41 out of 7, which indicates a high level of xenophobia, where 7 is maximum score. As you see here on the picture, on the left side, 2021, and in down, it's in Ukrainian language, Roma or Tsehan, it's intolerance 5.41. But in 2022, some positive changes occurred. Roma were no longer the most hated group, as Russian and Belarusian moved to the forefront, and the level of intolerance decreased to 5.08. This change is related to Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and people changed their priorities and focused their attention on external enemy. One of the reasons for the positive changes was the active participation of Roma in fighting with Russian full-scale invasion. Romani NGOs have been helping refugees, both Romani refugees and Ukrainian refugees, providing humanitarian support, also to boost civilians and Ukrainian soldiers. The organization actively engage in volunteer projects and collect and deliver humanitarian aid for different people and assist people who have lost their homes. So Romani NGOs have shown great resilience and show their readiness to support the country during the most difficult times. In addition, many Romani men have also joined the armed forces of Ukraine to fight against the Russian invaders since 2022. Approximately 1,300 Roma have served in the Ukrainian army, including my brother, Yanush Panchenko. He has already been demobilized and currently in Norway. These are our Roma as well. In this photo, my friend Arsen Mednik, who became a volunteer in the Ukrainian army in 2022, a documentary film titled How the War Changed Me was made about Arsen in Ukraine. The film tells the story of Arsen, a young man from Ukraine whose life was altered by the war. Now Arsen demobilized and he came to Germany, and he lives in next to me. One of the positive stories that also helped improve the image of the Roma was the story of how they captured a Russian tank in the village of Lyubimovka, located in the Kherson region, not far from my hometown of Kakhovka. This incident attracted media attention and became a symbol of resistance of ordinary people during Russian invasion of Ukraine. The story of the captured tank was widely covered in global media and became a source of pride for Ukrainians, improving the image of the Roma community in Ukraine. Even the president of Poland, Andrzej Duda, posted about it on his Twitter. The story of the tank captured by Roma became a true national meme in Ukraine, and animation, videos, patriotic songs, merchandise, and even board games dedicated to this event began to appear. For example, this short animation made by some Ukrainian guys. Additionally, the story became the basis for performance production called How to Make a Tank Disappear, which my colleagues and I wrote in 2023. We have already staged it in 5 times, 4 times in Germany and once in Ukraine. This performance, in humor way, show how the Roma might have stolen the tank. After the war began, many Roma became refugees and fled to the European Union, particularly from areas near the front line or those territories were occupied by Russia. Unfortunately, even during the war, many Roma continued to face discrimination, both in Ukraine and abroad. Ukrainian Roma, internally displaced from occupied territories, are sometimes denied housing or benefits provided for displaced person in Ukraine. Similar issue occurred with Roma in Europe. They are not as ready accepted into refugees camp, and there have been cases where Roma out-tricked, reject. So these incidents are not systemic, but they still occur. In 2023, I was one of the monitors for the OSCE on violations of Roma rights in Ukraine as part of the project monitoring the human rights situation for Roma affected by the armed conflict in Ukraine. This monitoring includes a list of violations both in the free territory of Ukraine and in the occupied areas. The report is already available online. Based on my observation, about 18% of the Roma population from occupied territories have left their homes. At the beginning of the war, Poland was the most popular destination for Romani people for migration. However, since 2023, Germany has become the country with the largest number of Roma migrants from Ukraine, possibly around 20,000 people. Roma also migrate to countries such as Czech Republic, Ireland, Netherlands, Denmark, Romania, Norway, and Belgium. Roma migrants are also present in other countries. On the map you see on the screen, I have marked the location of the respondents with whom I conducted interviews after the war. When the war began, the situation for Roma in Ukraine became worse. especially in the occupied territories, where there have been cases of shooting of abduction by Russian soldiers. For example, in late 2022, a Russian soldier shot a Romani family of 8, including 4 children in the Donetsk region. This mass killing was carried out with the intent to rob their property. Similar cases of abduction and violence against Roma by Russian soldiers have been recorded in Luhansk and Kherson region. In addition to the targeted attacks on Romani families by the Russian army, many Roma have been killed or lost their property due to missile strikes. For instance, in my hometown of Kakhovka a few days ago, my friend, his Crimean Roma, was killed in a missile strike while buying grocery at the store. He was 35 years old. To summarize, I would like to highlight few points. Despite the long story of Roma presence in Ukraine and their important role in its history, Roma still often face discrimination. This is due to the high level of xenophobia against Roma in society, which is common across other European countries as well. However, its issues is not just about public attitudes, but also the results of long-standing historical processes. Roma remain a relatively close group, often distrustful of Roma do not trust for government or to the state, and that's why sometimes Roma do not want to integrate in society, because they were when Roma just came to Europe, Roma were just discriminated. Then in the Russian Empire were discriminated. Then in Soviet time also were discriminated. And after Ukraine gained independence, the situation did not change too much. And until 2012, there were police raids against Roma. It was normal practice. This left mark on the community mind. So, but despite all the historical challenges and changes in living condition, for example, when they change their lifestyle from nomadic lifestyle to settled lifestyle, and then when the war began in 2022, Roma did not change their identity, and they don't change their traditional culture. Of course, changes are happening in Romania, but they don't lead to assimilation. For example, a few years ago, it was difficult to say about Roma in military roles, but today Roma soldiers are normal phenomenon in Ukraine. And in the same time, despite such changes, Roma remain true to themselves, and they still keep their traditional and cultural things. So thank you all for attention and the time you dedicated to this presentation. So now I would happy to start the discussion and answer any questions maybe you have.
Yes, we see Ms. Dema. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you for this presentation. It was very interesting. I have two questions. I have been reading Roma in the Ukraine from the origin to present days from Stefan Lederich. It has been published from Roma Foundation. And in the conclusion about the future, a lot of refugees won't be able to come back because of the lack of the documents. We have heard in Switzerland that we see that a lot of Roma people from Ukraine, they made their own papers. I mean, they have real documents. So I'm wondering, I'm very scared about the future, how they will be able to come back to Ukraine. How you will manage this? And the second question, it's can you tell me how many of this ethnic group still speak Romani, or how it works with the Romani language, please? Thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions. I will start for the second question. Mostly all Romani groups in Ukraine speak their own language. Only few Romani groups has lost their language, like Lingurare and some families of Serveria Roma. But mostly all Roma in Ukraine speak well Romanes. For example, in my city, it's a small city for 40,000 people. We have 4 different Romani groups. It's Kishinev, Crimean Roma, Serveria, and Vlahoria, and all of them speak Romanes good. But when Roma people from different group start to communicate between each other, I mean, for example, Serveria with Crimean Roma, they mostly use Ukrainian or Russian language because of language barrier. And for the first question, it's a hard question because how Roma will come back to Ukraine, it's a big question, but it's a second question. The first question, some Roma even cannot leave Ukraine because they don't have any documents for this. And I know some cases when Roma from occupied territories, they try to leave occupied territories through Russia and went to Latvia, and it was impossible for them to pass the border, and they had to go back to their city because they have some problem with documents. For example, in family of 5, 2 persons have some passports and 3 persons don't have. The other things, especially in my region, because Kherson region, it's next to Russia. Some Romani families, Roma don't mind about their citizenship, so they can have a Ukrainian passport and a Russian passport before, and some Russian Roma came to Ukraine, and some Ukrainian Roma came to Russia. So in this way, for example, family of 5, 3 persons in one family have Ukrainian passport and 2 members of the family Russian passport. So it was no problem before the war, but now some person cannot leave Ukraine because of Russian passport, because European countries don't give them to pass the border with Russian passport. And that's why whole family have to stay home, for example, because children cannot pass the border or something like this. And the other problem, Roma, it's easily more easier to come back to Ukraine than to left Ukraine without documents. But now in Europe, in Germany, for example, in Poland, in some other countries, I think we have Ukrainian passport service, and a lot of people can easily do passport here in Germany. So it's not a big problem to take passport in Germany, Ukrainian passport in Germany, but it's a problem to leave Ukraine for Germany.
Thank you, Yanush.
Anyone else with their comments or question?
Yes. Yeah, I have the one question for Yanush. And as you mentioned, there are around 100 NGOs registered in Ukraine.
Yeah.
But there's still however, the very fundamental problems, especially as you mentioned about the passport. Many of the Romanian families or Romanian people, they don't have the passport. Even the children don't have the birth certificate. Because of that, they are not getting access to the education. They are not going to the school. And so you can find the identity documentations and registrations are to a great extent absent with the communities. So despite the 100 NGOs, I think a very good number in Ukraine, and what their priorities. I'm not talking about the horrible poverty the Roma people are encountered with in Ukraine before the war, even in 1989, and that's the European Council laid down the guidelines for the elimination of all kind of discriminations against the community. So still in that, despite that, the government, the Ukrainian government, failed to implement in reality, in fact. So you can find that the authorities deny the Roma right to exist, even in the eyes of law and official registries, census, records, even in judiciary. So is there the Romani NGOs in Ukraine lack training, skills, or infrastructure to deal with these the fundamental and essential problems faced by the community and suffered by the community? That's my first question. And the second, that is the after the beginning of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. So you are quite aware that's how the Roma people are, what kind of problem they are facing when they are fleeing or they are moving out of Ukraine at the border and all. So the basic things, like the food and water, the basics for the survival, So they are deprived of the basics for the survival. So where is the Romani transnational NGOs and institutions, what they are doing? Because you say that's a lot of representatives, the government representative, even in Bavaria, in Germany. They say that the Roma and dogs are not allowed in the territories. Even in Poland, a lot of the media, a lot of such kind of cases and news we have seen, we have read. So how means the Romani transnational NGOs, because you are associated with the Czech Republic Academic Sciences, as well as you work with the different international organizations. So what is your take on this, the role of Romani transnational NGOs and institutions in order to assuage the pain and the sufferings and the losses of the Roma community, especially the escaped war from Ukraine?
We have about 100 organizations, Romani NGOs in Ukraine, but most of them are not functioning. Because it's very easy to open NGOs in Ukraine, but not so easy to work. Because, for example, in Germany, NGOs have some government supporting, and in Ukraine, not. So it's just, if you open these NGOs, you can do everything, whatever you want, but you need to find money and etc. by yourself. That's why we have a lot of NGOs in Ukraine, but most of them are not functional. Only, I think, 15 or maybe 20 are working well. So, and the situation with documents for Roma, its still situation is not very good. A lot of Roma, especially in Transcarpathia region and Odessa region, but mostly in Transcarpathia region, a lot of Roma don't have passports, and children don't have birth certificate. But situation is better than, for example, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So it means Ukrainian NGOs and Ukrainian government move to better life for Roma, but very slow, I think. So, and the other thing, I'm sorry, I did not catch the second question clearly, because some problem with connection. What is the main goal of the question? I'm sorry.
I talked about the role of Romani transnational institutions and NGOs.
Oh, okay.
How because how they can help the community to cope with such kind of sufferings, and how they can assuage the community in their pains and sufferings and losses. Because you can find there's a lot of, even in Germany, there's a Romani Rose, you mentioned about Romani Rose and all. So that's the, even though that's the responsibility, that's a historical responsibility lies at Germany, because of the, the 500,000 people, 500,000 Roma were killed in Holocaust. So that what I personally believe and perceive. Despite that, the situations, because you are in Germany, you are doing the work in Germany, so you are quite aware. So I'm not talking about the problem in Slovakia and the Czech Republic, and this is the very horrible situations. So this is also the reason that how the transnational institutions and the lack of passport and documents, these also the reasons, these causes the the lack of documentation exacerbates the problems and discrimination against the community when they are going to the different country.
Okay, thank you for your question. The connection, between Ukrainian civil society and European civil society or organizations is very important, because international organization, Romani organization, and not even Roma, for example, like OSCE, they exert pressure on Ukrainian government, to move in a positive direction for Roma. For example, last year, I with my colleagues and we made a report about human Roma rights in Ukraine since 2023. So about abductions and discrimination and etc. in the free territory of Ukraine and the occupied territory of Ukraine. And sometimes you have issues when refugee center in Ukraine, they don't want to accept Romani people who moved from occupied territory of Ukraine. For example, from my city in Kakhovka, they moved to Zakarpattia region for refugee camp. And sometimes, it's not systematic, but sometimes we have these issues. Refugee camp don't want to take Roma family in this refugee center. And in this case, we try to invite different international organization, Romani organization and non-Romani organization, European, and they make pressure on the Ukrainian government to move in a positive direction and to make some changes. That's why it's very important for Ukrainian Roma and Ukrainian Jews inside the country, especially its situation with discrimination and etc. That's because Ukraine wants to be a European country. That's why they do everything what European organization say to do with Roma. And you know, Roma issue is very important in Europe, especially in Germany, for example. And from other way, before the war, our NGOs, Roman NGOs, we was mostly inside of country, and so we didn't have any connection with another Roman organizations from Europe. And now a lot of Roma came to Europe, and we made this connection with European Roman NGOs, like with Central Sinti and Roma, Central Rat Sinti and Roma, as you said, with Romania Rose, and a lot of different organizations. I do not remember now, but a lot of organizations mostly from Germany, and it helped to unite Romani people from different countries. You know, for example, Roma in Germany, Roma in Balkans, Roma in Ukraine, they are same, you know, and sometimes we have some problem with language barrier, but cultural and mental, mostly we are same. That's why it's a specific role of Ukrainian on international European organization to unite Roma from different countries, because this is the only way to make and to have some power in different countries, you know.
So do we have anyone else for a question or a comment? Yeah, Mr. Kirchhoff, floor is yours.
Yeah, I would like to ask something regarding the attitudes of the large Ukrainian majority society towards the Roma. You were mentioning about the stolen tank and how this changed the image of the Roma in the society. Did that help to Roma people to get better position in the society, better opinion about them? And is this taken as a patriotic action, or it was again kind of blame, yeah, that the gypsies are stealing and they are only able to do this and that, you know, the negative attitudes? Can you little bit tell us about this?
When it happened, it was 3 years ago. It had very positive
Effect?
Yeah, very positive effect on Ukrainians. And in my city, for example, Ukrainians just came out on the street and say, "Oh, Roma, you are also support Ukraine. Thank you. You stole this tank. We are together. We are all one nation. We support each other, etc., etc." So it has had good effects for some time, for 1 year or maybe 1.5 years, but after this time, this situation, this information in media disappeared, and the situation became worse again as before the war. But it's interesting that we don't know really did Roma stole the tank or not, because we don't know. Does it true or not? But this effect, it had very big effect, and you saw that I show Bogardo's intolerance scalp that before the war, Roma was the most hated group in Ukraine with 5.41. But after the war and after when Roma stole this tank, it changed to 5.08. So, and Roma changed the position from first position to third position. So, in short, it had good effects for some time, but for this time, most Ukrainian forgot about this information. So it means we have to promote things like this more. For example, Roma stole the tank, Roma in Ukrainian army, Roma volunteers, etc., etc. So, and it should have good effects on Ukrainian population.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else with any more questions or comments? Since I don't see anything, Mr. Yanush, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. And what made the difference was that you had a lot of visuals and a video, which gave us more information because they are more productive in a sense that the images have a better effect. So I really like that presentation, and it had a lot of facts which were very useful. And we wish that, as you say, that such things about Roma's involvement in or their support or their involvement in the war efforts will have a positive impact. So we wish that should happen in future, and we hope that Romas would have a more inclusive and better life in Ukraine. And with these, I'd like to thank all others for joining and for their participation in this presentation. Your questions also made a difference because they add value to what we heard from him in his presentation. So we look forward to see you in our future lectures, which always happen usually in the last week of the month. So we hope to see you all in our next lecture. And with this, I like to thank you all. And each time I do mention that the memorial for Romas is almost at a completion stage, and we will soon have its formal inauguration in the city of Kannauj. So that would be again a marker to show our historical connections, and this will remind everyone about Kannauj importance in the Roma's life. Thank you very much. With this, I close the lecture and wish you all the best.
Thank you very much for your attention. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
day or have a nice evening. I think you have evening in India, yeah?
Right. Thank you very much, Yanush, and thank you very much, Senji, and all the Naziri and Vladimir and Dobromir and Jemaji and Chipian from Romania and so all the DPG and Mohan Singh. And this is one of our friends from Ukraine. That's he also joined. He is with the Seva Ukraine, and he also did a lot of work for the community in Ukraine. So I'll connect you, Yanush, with him, so that there will. But right now you are in Germany, so despite that, I'll connect you so that in futures there could be some kind of possible collaborations. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, and have a great day and great afternoon. Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.
See you.
Sostimasa vahtasa.
Devlesa.
Thank you.
Devlesa.
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 Avem Bahtale de Devlesa.